Welcome to the Wizarding Wireless Network podcast with me, AJ.
And me, Will.
Together, we will be bringing you our no-holds-barred thoughts, opinions, and detailed analysis on all things Wizarding World. So with that in mind, grab yourself a glass of fire whiskey and settle in to this week's episode of the WWN.
Welcome back to the Wizarding Wireless Network with your hosts AJ and Will, streaming to you on all of your favourite podcast providers and on YouTube. On this episode, it is a very sad episode. It is the final chapter of The Philosopher's Stone, chapter 17, The Man with Two Faces.
The Man with Two Faces, indeed. Now, on our last episode, chapter 16, we left it on a bit of a cliffhanger, but now we get to see who the Man with Two Faces actually is. William, who is the man? Is it Severus Snape?
It is not. It is Quirrell. The first line of the chapter. Quirrell. Oh!
Quelle surprise.
Exactly.
Quelle surprise.
Who saw that coming?
I know. I love such a dramatic shift in character development for Quirrell in this, because he literally went for 16 chapters of this book being a bumbling, nervous, poor stuttering Professor Quirrell, to now coming into chapter 17, the Man with Two Faces. Quirrell smiled. His face wasn't twitching at all.
Exactly.
He is just, he's a new man.
Yeah, that kind of dark, cold, really like, you know, that kind of English villain, very posh, very kind of like slick words, very like cold voice, just like changes on a dime.
But very camp at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
It's like whenever you say English villain, I automatically think of a man in a top hat with a handlebar moustache doing this. Do you know what I mean?
It's the proper like Sherlock villain.
Yeah, but exceptionally camp at the same time. What did you think about this chapter in terms of how it translated over into the movie? Do you think it was well done?
I'm in two minds. I kind of think it was definitely like a really well translated chapter. There are certain things when I was reading back through it, I was like, there is so much expose in this chapter that is just missing from the film. And you're kind of like, why did you take it out? There is just, that's the bit that you need from this chapter and it's just not there.
Yeah.
So, although, yes, when you're reading the chapter, I definitely had the characters' voices in my head and I definitely had like the film going through my head of like, this is what, I had the film playing in the back of my head.
Yeah.
But it just hits harder in the book.
Mm-hmm. What do you think they could have done better in the movie?
I think the hospital wing scene, I think trying to split a lot of the expose part up into Harry and Dumbledore in the hospital wing and then Harry, Ron and Hermione just having a general conversation in the corridor and then Hagrid off by the train.
Yeah.
All of those bits just kind of like split up, whereas in the book it's all in one kind of thing after the other. Yeah,
it's like a sequence of events.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I think for me, the standout thing in this chapter, there was a couple of things, but right now, if we're talking about Professor Quirrell in the chamber, is to the extent, and I know that we touched on this in our last episode, but to the magnitude of how powerful this man is. Because from reading this, it just sort of reinforced the belief that it's not Voldemort who is giving his powers to Quirrell. Voldemort is just essentially hitching a ride.
He's piggybacking.
He's piggybacking. It's just consequential that he's there. But in this scene, the amount of magical skill and mastery that Quirrell goes through and shows us, it's absolutely astonishing because you never see it again. Like, you never see it again. Like, Quirrell snaps his fingers, ropes spring out of thin air and wrap themselves tightly around Harry. When have you ever seen that? And the series, again, where have you seen that?
Yeah, I suppose, like, nothing, like, the only time you kind of see something similar is Umbridge with the centaurs, but, like, that's all through wand work. It's not wandless, wordless magic.
Exactly. It's very rare that you do tend to see a witch or wizard do wandless magic. But this is also further backed up where later on, Quirrell just claps his hands once and the ropes binding Harry fall off. Camp!
Honestly, like, did you have it like clap from the side? It's just like...
Yeah, it's not like... It's like... It's like a whole big thing. A whole thing.
The flourish, everything.
The flourish and blots, but without the blots. But yeah, I must admit, yeah, Professor Quirrell really stepped up his game in this chapter. Good for him. Good for him.
I mean, it's definitely a 180 turn from Quirrell's character, going from the stuttering mess that we see throughout the book to him just being very cold, very eloquent, and very kind of put together. This is kind of like suddenly that veil has dropped. This is who he is.
Yeah, exactly. Another bit about Quirrell's character development in this. I absolutely love the shade that he throws at Professor Snape, because when Harry's trying to grasp the fact that Snape was trying to save him throughout the course of this book, Quirrell then turns around and says, you know, it's so useful to have him swooping around like an overgrown bat. And I chuckled so hard at that.
It's so true. And I think the thing is, like, the movie translates that perfectly, where he's walking away and it's just a cloak kind of like billowing behind him. Exactly.
I absolutely loved it. But, you know, well done, Quirrell. Well done. The shade, where was this 16 chapters before? It would have, to be fair, I suppose, turned this book into very much of a comedy instead of the thriller that it is at this moment in time.
The restricted section was well and truly open.
Absolutely. As a side note, for the graphic of this week, I want Professor Quirrell in the workroom with RuPaul doing the reading challenge.
With the glasses.
Yeah. All right. I don't want...
Let's do this.
Let's do it. Now I've just got Professor Quirrell. You know that read that Katia does to Roxy Andrews? I think about you every morning at the bus stop. It's literally Voldemort. I think about you every morning on the doorstep of the Dursleys. Abandoned. Oh, what a giggle.
So yeah, we get Quirrell kind of like making some quips, and we then get, like I said, the expose about Snape's character and the fact that Snape was actually trying to save Harry, and we get a little glimpse into this, and Dumbledore actually brings this up again, and I was hoping that we would get a bit more information than this at this point, but we don't. And it's about James and Snape having that kind of friendship, and Snape being saved by James. Wait, did I say that right? Yeah, I did say that right.
Yeah, you did.
And I was hoping that they would go into a bit more detail in this chapter, and I can't for the life of me remember what it is that... Oh, no, it's just I've just remembered what it was that he saves him from.
What? Does it drown?
No.
Is it a drowning thing?
No, it's not.
What is it?
I'll give you a hint. Prisoner of Azkaban.
From Lupin?
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know why I had... Do you know what I think? Why I'm thinking they was drowning? Because of that scene in Order of the Phoenix.
Oh, yeah.
But then I get... Yeah, that's just the way my mind goes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it suddenly just dawned on me. I was like, I was racking my brains all evening. I was like, what was it they actually saved him from? Like, I can't even remember.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense why they didn't tell everything, because it's then revealed later on. Okay. It's almost like there's a plan to the writing.
Funny that, isn't it? A plot. A plot. Who is she?
Who knew? Okay, so yeah, we get a little bit of expose around kind of Snape wanting to save Harry, and the fact that he started the whole reason Snape was the referee during the Quidditch match was to actually be around to save Harry. But we then finally start to see what was going on the whole time, and we finally find the Mirror of Erised.
Now, I know we were talking about Professor Quirrell being very much a camp villain at this point, but I don't know about you. See, when you were reading this part and he was walking round the mirror and he's just so casually telling Harry how he met Voldemort and this, all that, and the other. That is the campest thing. I don't know if it's just me, but it's like, this is supposed to be the big grand reveal of the villain, but in my mind, I have just got this man, turban askew, walking around this mirror going, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. Give me the fucking stone.
It is a bit of a... I don't know whether I prefer the book version of this part or the film version. The film version is a lot more succinct and it gets to the point a lot quicker than the book does. And I don't know how I feel, whether I like the fact that there's a bit more kind of pacing and walking around the mirror, having a look to see whether or not Quirrell can work it out for himself without Harry, and that Harry's just going to be a witness to Voldemort returning to power sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What do you think? Like, do you prefer the film part?
I mean, I think it did a very good job in translating over, because, I mean, for me, I think... interesting, actually, because now I'm starting to second guess myself.
Do you know what I mean? Like, the more you kind of read into this chapter, you're kind of like...
Yeah, I get what you mean. I like the book aspect of it, because you get that insight of what's actually going through Harry's head.
Yeah.
Because he sort of thinks, right, okay, what's going on? I need to come up with a plan. You know, at this stage, you're 11 years old, but you need to come up with a plan to save this grown-ass man who is trying to conquer world domination. But it's down to you, an 11-year-old child, to do that.
And I think it's quite interesting that this is one of the very few times in the series that we get a internal monologue from Harry.
And although, was that Harry or was it Voldemort? Could you imagine?
Could you imagine?
You know how, like, in the Game of Thrones books, have you ever read them?
Yeah, I've read 2 of them.
Right, I started them, but I got to a bit in it and I was like, that's quite enough for me. You know how it's like every character, the chapters are every character's perspective? Could you imagine like a Harry and Voldemort monologue? But from like chapters, different perspective.
Could you imagine like the fact like each chapter, like one is Harry, one is Quirrell, one is Harry, one is Quirrell.
Uh-huh.
That Forbidden Forest scene would have been completely different.
Very true. Very true. Although, do you know what I've just had to sit and think? Voldemort basically had to do 6 years of Hogwarts all over again. Live it. Well, no, yeah, well, living in Harry.
Part of him had to, yeah.
And he still got his ass whipped.
Exactly, and Harry still wasn't that good. Like, you would have thought someone who's already been through all of the academic process would have had some insight.
Well, one would think.
I mean, one of the things that I like in the book that they definitely missed a trick in the in the films is the little hark back to Quirrell being in Diagon Alley and in the Leaky Cauldron. And it's Harry's kind of like, oh my God, yeah, Quirrell was in Diagon Alley that same day that we were in Gringotts. But like we said, I think back, like way back in like when we were reading the chapter, was the fact that Quirrell doesn't have the turban in the Leaky Cauldron at that point. He's not stuttering. He's not like the character we then see at Hogwarts. We are seeing the character of Quirrell as we do now.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something that they completely missed out with the films not having that, like, why is he now wearing a turban suddenly aspect to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was really nice to kind of like see that Harry was almost, we're kind of piecing the story together as Harry's piecing it together. So that's what I quite like about this. Whereas the film, I think it skips too much ahead. It kind of, I don't know, I didn't feel as much of a plot twist with the film as I do with the book. And I don't know why, because the film makes you like 100% believe it's Snape until the very last minute. And yet it doesn't really come as a surprise that it's Quirrell.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean.
I can't tell you why. It just doesn't feel like a plot twist. But in the book, it feels like a plot twist.
Okay, fair enough. Interesting take. Have we actually spoken about Voldemort yet?
No.
17 minutes in. Is the turban still on?
The turban's still on at this point.
Okay.
I think I've just got to the bit where he saw his reflection. Quirrell moved closely behind. And he seemed to come from... Okay, so I've just got the bit where we start to hear Voldemort's voice. So, eventually, throughout this whole conversation, we end up getting Voldemort speak through Quirrell, or a voice kind of off in the distance, but from Quirrell's location. So at this point, we're now starting to see that Quirrell is not alone.
Yeah. He is certainly not alone. It is the intrusive thought personified on the back of his head.
We get a hint that there's something going on with Quirrell, if we haven't already pieced that bit together.
Yeah, he ain't right.
And he then starts to get Harry to try and fish out the stone.
Now, this is always, I find, so interesting, because to me, it's so logical. And I love it. You know, how they actually get the stone.
As in the thing that Dumbledore puts on the mirror. Yeah,
and it's like... But like, I just need to know the full intricacies of it. Like, so what was the magic involved in that?
Like, how the stone actually got in the mirror in the first place? Like...
But was the stone in the mirror?
I don't know.
But this is the thing. It's like Harry wanted to get the stone but not use it, and then he just felt this thing appear in his pocket.
So was it like an apparition? Like...
Well, I know that's the thing, but then how does the mirror know that? Is it like a sentient being as well?
Well, I suppose it must.
Arguably, I suppose so.
Because it can read your thoughts. It can read your kind of deepest desire. So it's got some sentient, I would suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe it's that whole thing of the objects going into no...
Into non-being, which is to say everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe. Harking back to a Ravenclaw quiz.
Every possibility.
But I do agree with you. It is definitely like, it's such obvious logic to put it in the mirror, to make it so that you could only get it if you don't want to use it. Because obviously Voldemort needs to use it. Like, that's such a brilliant concept.
Absolutely. I love it. Absolutely love it.
So yeah, Harry then manages to get the stone because obviously he doesn't want to use it. Now, interestingly, his thought process, though, is he wants to get it so that Voldemort can't get it. And ironically, that's the downfall to the situation.
Yeah.
And, okay, this is the bit that always annoys me. And I don't know why it bugs me so much.
Okay, let's go for it.
It's Harry's excuse or Harry's lie to Voldemort.
I'm shaking hands with Dumbledore.
I've won the House Cup. Seriously, you've looked into the bloody mirror of Erised and you've seen what your heart desires. Why not just use that?
Well, true. Although I suppose he doesn't really want to bring up his dead mother and father with their killer. Do you know what I mean?
But that makes sense. Like,
well, it does.
Why would it not? Like,
I don't know. The boy has 11. That much I will say.
Well, this is why he was in Gryffindor, not Slytherin.
Well, because he's not evil.
He's not good at lying.
Yeah, see, red flag those people that are good at lying. I hold the mirror up to yourself, William.
I'm the problem.
It is. You really are.
Oh.
It's the Catholic guilt for me. I couldn't do it.
What, the lying?
Yeah, I can't.
What, even to your parents' killer?
Well, knowing me with my OCD, I would be like, was that all right for me to lie? Do you know what I mean? I would need constant reassurance.
Just going to Voldemort. It's like, that was a lie. Was that okay? Am I okay to lie to you?
Yeah. Is that all right? Yeah, cool. I thought so. Excellent. Let's move on.
Swiftly on. So no, I didn't get the stone. It was just it was a cup.
It was a cup.
It was a cup.
It was a nice wee mug.
Don't worry, it wasn't Helga Hufflepuff's cup. You're safe. You're still safe for another 7 books.
I know. It's the little whinging Starbucks mug.
Oh my God, could you imagine if the Wizarding World did that? They did the Starbucks mugs, but for like...
They are missing a trick, Starbucks. Get in there. Because they do the Disney parks. They should really do one for like Universal.
Exactly. Trademark WWN. Obviously, that lie doesn't work for Voldemort and actually gets him quite riled up to the point that he wants to speak to Harry himself.
Face to face.
Face to face.
Face to face, yes. The gag of the season.
Give us a twirl, Quirrell. Give us a twirl.
Absolutely. The turban has fallen.
Exactly. And what do we see? Not quite.
Well, that... See when he takes the turban off and Voldemort does that, like, pushing of the head.
It is so gross.
You see what I've become. That's
see
what
I
I
must do to survive.
Yeah. But yes.
I must admit, like, okay, so obviously we've seen the concept art for Voldemort's original face that they were planning on doing. And then we've seen, obviously, the animatronic face that they have in the studio tour.
Terrifying.
I would have much rather had that at the back of Quirrell's head.
See, I'm going to disagree with you because I like what they've done there. Because when you look at Voldemort's face in Goblet of Fire, when Ralph Fiennes plays him, there's a stark difference because Voldemort in Philosopher's Stone looks damaged. He looks wounded, and you can tell it's like parasitic. But whereas when it becomes fully fledged and formed in Goblet of Fire, there's that transition. But I am very keen to see Voldemort's face, like, you know, like almost Demogorgon-like. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get it. It's just, I think I would preferred him to have looked a bit more like Ralph Fiennes' Voldemort, but at the back of Quirrell's head. Because okay. I think the trouble is like the description we get is that kind of slitted eyes, slits for nose, like he looks like a serpent, but not to the point where like it's like the concept art makes him look like an alligator.
Yeah.
Like it's not to the extent that it's deformed. It's just he's so kind of broken, he doesn't look human. I would have much rather had that as the face that was behind the turban than what we got. I think he looks too human, and the whole point of Voldemort is when like his entity at that point is so divided, he's no longer human. So for him to still look like a person, it just doesn't kind of sit right. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just would have... I would have preferred it to look a bit more like Ralph Fiennes' character.
Fair enough.
But I completely get what you mean with the whole thing of like, he looks battered when he's in the Philosopher's Stone versus Goblet of Fire where he's reborn, renewed and everything.
Yeah. Now, there's another bit in this chapter where Quirrell is almost taunting Harry about his mother and father dying. And it's Voldemort then comes to say that his dad put up a good fight before his mum died. But my question is this, so if James put up such a good fight and actively tried to defend Harry and Lily, why did Lily die? Because you know how when Harry actively gave himself up in the Forbidden Forest and, you know, got in Deathly Hallows, none of Voldemort's spells were binding. Everybody was essentially protected. Harry had bestowed on everybody in Hogwarts the same love that his mum did for him. Arguably, James did the exact same thing for Lily and Harry. So why did Lily die?
So I think we had a little bit of a discussion about this last time. I think it came down to the fact that both when Harry sacrificed himself and Lily sacrificed himself, it wasn't putting up a fight. They weren't fighting to stay alive.
They knew they were dying.
They sacrificed themselves to protect someone.
Fair enough.
So
yeah,
I think
that was right, yeah.
I think that was probably what we came up with that. Hence why Lily still dies and Harry survives.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this whole taunting of like Harry's parents, like, I don't know. I think I could skip this bit in the chapter. I don't think it kind of really adds anything. It breaks this section up too much, I think. I think if this had been Quirrell talking about it before revealing that he had Voldemort with him, that could have been a bit more kind of creepy and suspecting like something's wrong, because like, well, how do you know? You weren't there. Only for it to be like a shared memory sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I just think it breaks up this section a bit too much.
So, Quirrell gets fatally wounded. Now, this is what I will say for this scene in the movie. It translated very well from the book.
Yes.
Although, in the book, you get this really vivid description of when Harry was touching Quirrell, you know, on the hands, the face. It was blistering instead of turning to rubble and falling.
Yeah, I think we started to talk about this wasn't last episode, but I think maybe the episode before I think it was the last episode when we talked about Quirrell, I definitely preferred the idea of him blistering and him dying rather than crumbling into a like pile of rocks. Yeah.
Very much like Voldemort dying in Deathly Hallows instead of turning into confetti.
Exactly. Yeah.
That still annoys me.
I think everyone watching it is constantly annoyed.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's where we currently stand. Well, the only person not standing at the moment is Quirrell because, you know, he's dead. But interestingly enough, whenever Harry is trying to kill Quirrell, you know, by holding on to his face, holding on to his arms, the pain that is shooting through his scar, this is probably the most intense that we've seen it. Because up until Goblet of Fire, arguably, this is the only time that Voldemort and Harry's skin meet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get this blinding pain effect that Harry's got. But
I think this is the one thing that annoyed me about the film, or like that one of those translations that isn't in the film, is the fact that Harry's actually meant to be in pain touching him. It is a battle of kind of like him overcoming like his own pain to kill Voldemort or to stop Voldemort.
It's like that.
That adrenaline rush.
Yeah, the will to survive, the will to carry on.
Yeah. I think that's what's then missing through the film is the fact, like, it's seeming like Harry can just touch Quirrell. Quirrell's in pain, but Harry's fine.
Yeah.
And then, like, I think this is where it makes more sense in the book that Harry faints afterwards, whereas in the film, it's almost like he's defeated Quirrell, and it's like, oh, I'll just go for a nap now.
Yeah, and it's like as soon as Voldemort flies through him, then that's why he faints, as opposed to... But the interesting thing about this is, like, from Harry fainting to waking up in the hospital wing in his white company, white linen sheets, I might add, it's 3 days. 3 days have passed.
Yeah. Madame
Pomfrey is on the midazolam, honey.
It was comatose. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the thing, like, I think this is what we talked about in one of the earlier episodes, is the fact that you have no concept of time with the film.
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, you're fully informed as to kind of like where you are, like how long things are taking.
Yeah.
Whereas in the films, like, it's seeming like Harry's woken up like the next morning.
Exactly, that's what you think.
Yeah. You don't really like know where you are you kind of know where you're at with the year based on like it being snowing around Christmas and then it kind of defrosts, but you don't really know how close you are to the end of the academic year.
Yeah.
So no, I do agree. It does get a bit kind of like fast and loose with how much time is passing in the films.
Yeah. This did make me snigger reading this when Harry comes round in the hospital wing. Yes.
The little vision of him like trying to catch the golden snitch, but just grabbing onto Dumbledore's glasses. It's such a kind of little cute moment, but also I just couldn't help but giggle listening to reading this.
Yeah, I thought that was quite funny, actually, to be fair. God love him. This is one of my favourite scenes in the whole book, you know, when Harry is in the hospital wing, because like we said before, it does go from like one extreme to the other, because you go from Dumbledore, this whole backstory being revealed to him in the space of 2 pages, and then all of a sudden Ron and Hermione come in, and Hagrid comes in, and then Hagrid has this like breakdown because he's like, it's all my fault, and I felt really bad for Hagrid at that point. I genuinely did, because there is not a bad bone in that man's body, not a single bad bone, and it was just happenstance. But even reading this chapter back for this episode, I could not help but get emotional at the part when Hagrid gives Harry the book.
I know. And it's even the fact like, oh, because I know you don't have any photos of your parents, so I got all of their old friends to give me some photos to put this together. I was like, oh.
It's just precious. It is absolutely precious. And it's one of my favourite bits. I mean, even in the movie as well, when he gives it to him on the platform.
Yeah. But it's like I said to you like earlier, it's just like, it just seems like it makes that scene more rushed.
Yeah.
And you don't get that kind of like acknowledgement from Hagrid, like Hagrid saying sorry, like owning up to kind of like what he did. And like, for instance, like he says like, I'm never going to drink again. And it's like, it's all of those little things that make Hagrid such an like warm character.
Lies. Hagrid. Lies. I'm never drinking again. We've all said that. Never drinking again.
Dry January.
Farewell, Aragog.
So we get a little bit of expose as well from Dumbledore as well at this point. And I like this expose in the books more so than the film. Mm-hmm. Now, Dumbledore, I think it's more the way that he says things in the book versus the way Richard Harris said them in the film. And I think it's not necessarily Richard Harris did a bad job in any way. It was just more the fact that the lines they picked out for the film weren't necessarily always the correct one.
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea that Dumbledore, although he wants to tell Harry, it's this whole thing of like, okay, so is there anything... There's some things I'd like to know. Can you tell me? I want to know the truth. Okay. So he goes, the truth is a beautiful and terrible thing and should therefore be treated with great caution. However, I shall answer your questions unless I have a very good reason not to, in which case I beg you'll forgive me. I shall not, of course, lie. I think this sets up Dumbledore's character perfectly for the rest of the series. Mm-hmm. Hagrid, not Hagrid, my God.
Dumbledore. It's been a long day. It's been a long day for us all.
It has. Dumbledore.
Say it's been a long day for me. I've done nothing.
It's been a long day for me.
Have you seen, that that clip of 51st, First Dates, where the woman comes in and she just falls down in the chair and she's like, oh, I'm tired, but I ain't done nothing. Me. But yes, Dumbledore.
Yes, so Dumbledore. Now, this sets up Dumbledore's character really nicely because actually throughout the whole series, this is what Dumbledore does to Harry. He doesn't lie to Harry at any point. He just doesn't tell him everything.
Yeah.
He tells Harry what he needs to know at the right time.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really poignant part of Dumbledore's character, that it's not that Dumbledore doesn't want to say anything to Harry, and it's not that he's trying to lie to Harry, it's the fact that he knows what Harry needs to know when he needs to know it.
Mm-hmm.
And this shows up time and time again throughout the books. But in the film, it's almost like Dumbledore just failed to tell Harry anything.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I feel like there's just certain things that he says in the book that makes Dumbledore's character so much more of a wiser character.
Yeah, he's just sort of been he's just drip feeding stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't know, it just makes me kind of feel like they could have picked better lines in this moment between Dumbledore and Harry to really kind of like build Dumbledore's character at this stage.
Yeah.
So I feel like we don't really get to see Dumbledore's character really until Michael Gambon steps into the role.
Yeah. I'm just laughing. You say Gambon funny.
Gambon?
Yeah. I don't know if it's just me, or I might be saying it funny, but whenever you say Michael Gambon.
Like Bonbon.
And I say Gambon, like gammon.
How is it meant to be said? Like
I don't know. Do you know, right? You know these things, right? And it's like, you know what I mean when I say this? Do you ever get something that makes you cringe or annoys you for no apparent reason? There is no rhyme or reason as to why it does.
Yeah.
See when people, it makes me cringe. And I don't know why, but see when people say beau bâton instead of beau battens.
Well, they try and put the French inflection on it.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, it's like they're doing nothing wrong. They're doing absolutely nothing wrong, but every time I hear it, it just makes me cringe inside. It's like nails down a chalkboard. And I think it's because whenever you hear Dumbledore and Goblet of Fire say, Burbans, that's the way I always read it. And then whenever you hear Bobaton, I'm like, oh.
Like when everyone's doing like the racetrack and they're passing the Bobaton.
No, it's not the one. It's not the one.
But the thing is, like,
I am now thinking of Madame Maxine in Fleur Delacour speaking in this gorgeous French accent and then going really Dumbledore West Country when they say Beauxbatons. you saved her even though she wasn't yours to save. At Beauxbatons. Do you know what I mean? There's that.
But yeah, do you get what I mean though? Like with regards to the fact that Dumbledore's character doesn't really kind of get built on until really like the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. The man is like as Shrek would say, ogres are like onions.
Have many layers.
Many layers, and Dumbledore is a man who was many, many layers.
He was a very thick onion.
He was a very thick onion.
I don't know if that...
No, but let's just get real for a minute here, right? Who was the top and who was the bottom between Dumbledore and Grindelwald?
Do you think they were both tops?
I don't know.
Just... Or maybe it was like a wrestling match, like fighting for like who's on top.
I'm going to say Dumbledore was the top and Grindelwald was the bottom.
I was just thinking the same thing. I think
and I'll tell you for why.
Quite camp. Like, even though he's evil, he's still quite camp.
Yeah, but I'll tell you for why. Dumbledore had all the power but didn't want it. Grindelwald desperately he had the power but he wanted it.
Power bottom.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
Mm-hmm. I guarantee you Grindelwald would have a fabulous arch.
He could do the downward dog. Yep.
Like...
Oh no, cat pose? Cow pose. Cat pose.
Cat cow.
Cat cow. Cat cow.
Anyway, segueing off.
Just a tad, as we always do with this show. So, let's bring it back to the man of the hour, which is Dumbledore. We get that expose that we finally find out that the invisibility cloak was, of course, from Dumbledore, that he knew Harry would use it, that Snape was protecting Harry all this time.
Mm-hmm.
And we finally then get, when Ron and Hermione come in to see Harry, that actually this is the question I think we had earlier on in the show was, did Dumbledore know what was going on the entire time? And even Harry then goes, he's a funny man, Dumbledore. I think he sort of wanted to give me a chance. I think he knows more or less everything that goes on here.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I don't think it was an accident he let me find the mirror and how it worked. And that that Dumbledore knew that Harry would try and face off against Voldemort.
Mm.
Now, I know what you're going to say, AJ.
Do you?
Child endangerment.
Child endangerment. I mean, who are we to argue with Albus Percival?
Wulfric, Brian, Dumbledore.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I just can't imagine someone with the middle name of Brian being a bottom. Do you know what I mean?
I thought we circled away from this.
No, it's still there. It's still there. Yeah. Do you think Grindelwald called Dumbledore Brian in the bedroom? Hey, Brian! Oh. Images. Anyway, what happened to the rest of this chapter? I forget. Is Gryffindor won the House Cup yet?
No, we're getting there. We're going to the feast next. I think Dumbledore's already had a feast.
I was going to say, well, yeah, I think he has. Right, Madame Pomfrey. against her goodwill, lets Harry go all the way downstairs to the feast, whereby we then get one of the most iconic scenes in the whole franchise.
Yes. The clap and change.
I'm so glad you said change after that. Syphilis! Oh. See, now I've just got bloody images of Madame Pomfrey doing like a little pop-up clinic.
You have to. There's
You have
16-year-olds
to.
running around a boarding school.
100%.
Madame Pomfrey sex clinic.
God. No wonder that woman runs a tight ship.
Exactly.
Out! Out! Anyway,
So, yeah.
right, basically, right, we're to sum up what is happening here.
Sorry, we've gone past the line that I did highlight. Now,
Okay.
interestingly, one of the things that Hermione brings up during that conversation between the three of them, or is it, no, I think it's Dumbledore's line. And it's actually something that Hermione then says later on in the film, in the Chamber of Secrets. Fear of the name only increases fear of the thing itself.
I highlighted that as well.
And I was like, okay, changing up the script.
Just a tad.
But I just think it's such a good line from Dumbledore. And the fact that they changed it to Hermione saying it, it's just like, Hermione, stop stealing people's lines. Yeah, sorry, I wanted to make sure we actually said that because that is probably like one of the things that I read and I was like, oh my God, okay, fine. We get to the Great Hall where we finally get one of the, like you said, one of the greatest scenes in the film, and it sticks with Harry throughout. Like, this is one of the things that he's never going to forget. Stop. You better stop.
I'm sorry, I can't. So,
obviously, like, Slytherin has won the House Cup for the 7th year. Was it 7th year in a row?
Oh, probably. At this stage, who knows?
It's always going to be 7. It's going to be the blade number 7 again, isn't it?
I know.
It's always 7. So, yeah, I just found it was actually 7. It was the 7th year in a row that Slytherin had won. So, again, 7 cropping up again. After everyone has cheered that finally Slytherin has won the House Cup yet again, that Dumbledore then agrees to give out his last minute points. Now, shade or no shade?
What?
Giving out the last minute points in front of everyone. Stirring the bloody pot.
I love it. He will... Dumbledore woke up that day and chose violence. I love it. He was like, I see you, and that is what it is.
Like, don't even announce the points before everyone starts celebrating. No, let Slytherin celebrate and then cut them off.
Do you know what that is? That's the equivalent of just put the tip in and then pull out. Yeah. Literally. Oh no.
So yeah, we then get all of the points awarded, and finally we get some points awarded to Neville, and it's such a sweet little line from the fact that, like, it points out Neville has not won Gryffindor a single house point all year, and this is like the first point, and he gets them the House Cup.
Yeah, it is all Neville. And I'm putting it down to that.
It's such a sweet line. Mm-hmm. So, absolutely. We then get Gryffindor winning the House Cup, Snape reluctantly shaking Professor McGonagall's hand. And then, actually, do you remember we were talking about this in one of the other episodes about the pass marks and, like, being kicked out of Hogwarts? Like, what happens if you don't pass your exams?
Oh, yeah.
We finally get a little bit of an explanation around that.
Do we?
So, even Neville scraped through. His good herbology marks made up for his abysmal potion ones. They had hoped that Goyle, who was almost as stupid as he was mean, might be thrown out, but he passed too. So, I think you were actually onto something in the last podcast where we were talking about whether or not you get kicked out or not. So, I think you were onto it.
Fair dues.
That, yeah. I mean, I don't know what happens to you after you get kicked out of Hogwarts. Do you... can you never perform magic again?
You live on as the groundskeeper.
So yeah, we get a bit more expose and the explanation of, they actually get their exam results back. Again, something we touched upon in one of the other podcasts being the fact that you never see the Hogwarts exams.
No, it's only really tend to see them in Order of the Phoenix for the OWLs.
Yeah, and that's the only time you really get to see about any exams. So, what do you make of the end of the chapter?
What, the way that it ended?
Yeah, do you prefer the ending of the book or the way they leave it at the end of the film?
Movie? Love it.
Train going off into the distance?
I'm not going home, not really. Ah! Love it.
It's such a good kind of ending. I think the trouble is with the book, it's just okay, we've got to the end of the year, everyone said goodbye to each other, but the final, it doesn't wrap up. It's not it's not a goodbye. It's oh, have a good holiday. Oh, I will. They don't know we're not allowed to use magic at home. I'm going to have so much fun with Dudley this summer.
As one does. But yeah, no, I get what you mean. But I love the movie ending. I do.
Yeah. I think if we had a bit of a mixture of the two, just that ending of the train going into the distance, Hagrid kind of waving everyone off, it's just... it's so good.
It is. It's fabulous. But with that, then, we come to the very end of our first book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
So, yes, we've come to the end of the first book, but we haven't quite reached the end of season 1. We have got one more episode.
We do. Next week, we are going to be talking about the life of the one and only Nicolas Flamel.
No. Beaubaton.
Stop it.
Nicolas Flamel.
Yes, the one and only. So yes, join us next week when we discuss about that man.
Yes, so we're going to talk about all things Philosopher's Stone, Nicolas Flamel, the creator, the one, the only. Yes. So yes, thank you so much for listening. As always, make sure to keep your radios tuned in for next week's episode. And if you haven't already, make sure to click the link below to subscribe to our channel or to favourite our podcast over to wherever you stream your podcast to see and listen to our lovely faces and voices every week. But
32 episodes in and you finally say it right.
What? It's
without going.
I've got it right a few times.
I'm kidding. I'm only taking the mic.
I can do the intro, just never the outro. I've just talked for too long by the time we get here.
No.
But yes, thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see. You're such a dick. You messed it up.
Bird noises.
So yes, thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
Yeah, cherry bubbles.
Kindest regards.
Cherry bubbles.